Through his promises to crack down on immigration at the southern border and grow the U.S. economy. Yet a new investigation from the New York Times reveals the two political issues may be tied more tightly together than previously known. The paper details how major U.S. brands and major corporations are using questionable staffing companies nationwide to fill roles at warehouses not typically wanted by American workers. The Times investigation reads in part, quote, "The broken border has been a lifeline for America's on-demand economy under both Democratic and Republican administrations, including Mr. Trump's first term. Thousands of companies have exploited its porousness by plucking workers from the ranks of unauthorized migrants, sometimes with impunity." Joining us now, one of the investigative reporters behind this piece, Steve Eder, joins us here on set. What more did you find on this? This is fascinating because I think a lot of people don't think of this story from this angle.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
And happy to talk about it. This all sort of began with us looking at, the issues of the broken border and that notion and kind of what's behind it, who's benefiting from it.
Right.
And so that led us to, when the border bill, failed, for example, earlier this year, that led us to the answer we kept hearing was American businesses. And we wanted to kind of interrogate how that works and how is it that migrants coming into the country find work. That led us to staffing agencies and brought us into this whole investigation where we were looking at the middleman role that staffing agencies can play in connecting migrant workers, immigrant workers with jobs.
And Elise, these are companies we know. I mean, that people, often make orders to.
And some of the companies that are cited as having used these workers are ones that we would go to frequently, such as Home Goods and
Right.
Marshalls and Alo Yoga. These various companies might have used workers that came from one of these staffing agencies. Can you talk about the staffing agency that you used as the case study for looking into how this crisis has gotten to where it is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we sort of focused in on, we were looking at the industry, but then focused in on a sort of a case study, a company called Barron HR, run out of Southern California. And what we learned was that Barron HR was run by an individual who had been in the staffing agency for 2 decades, had quite a few legal troubles over that time, but had grown once and then again into this large outfit. And that what we found was, and we talked to workers, we talked to for this project, we talked to 100 workers, and many of them Barron workers. And what they told us about was not getting paid on time. They talked about having injuries at work sites and struggling to get getting their claims handled. They talked about discrimination, and so that brought us through, and we were able to sort of look from there into the clients that Barron HR would work with around the country, and began to try to map out a world that can be difficult to map out.
So, Steve, if Donald Trump puts into place the proposals on the border that he has set forth during his campaign, what sort of impact is this going to have in terms of this part of the sort of hidden part of the economy?
Well, I can say this. I hate to speculate, but what I can say is that this type of system, where look, not all staffing agencies are breaking the rules and engaging in this, but a lot of companies do use this. It's gone on under the current administration, the previous administration, Donald Trump's administration, and Obama. So it's a system that's been in place for a long time and has taken on new shapes and forms over time and become increasingly important, particularly in the consumer age. So it's quite systemic.
Katty Kay.
So, Steve, if there is, under the next administration, a real crackdown on the border or deportation of some people who are here illegally, what impact does it have on some of these companies and on the U.S. economy?
Yeah, it's a good question, what that would look like, because you can see, that companies are routinely turning to staffing agencies. Some of these staffing agencies are using, this worker pool. They're coveting this worker pool. So, that could be a potential, ramification is affecting, the movement of these types of goods. We're seeing this particularly, in our reporting in warehouses and factory settings and, in logistics and such and the movement of goods.
All right, investigative reporter for the New York Times, Steve Eder, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your reporting with us.